All right, welcome to the Money Act podcast where we talk about money and movies. This is our inaugural first episode, and I'm happy to have Michael Comley, a longtime friend and colleague. We've worked many years together,
Yes.
going back over 10 years, I believe, way back originally in the R&H studio in LA, then Vancouver, LA, or Vancouver, R&H.
Method.
Method,
Yeah.
Sony. I think we crossed paths of Sony.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, many, and
Back
then of course now
in
Imaginary,
California. Yeah. Yeah. All over the
all
place.
over. Yeah, so we kind of follow, and then I'll follow him, and then he'll follow me.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. So, Conley, why don't you give us a quick, brief overview of your background?
Sure. Yeah. Started in entertainment business about just shy 25 years ago. Many people back in the late 90s and early 2000s, kind of humble beginnings of taking some classes on 3D. It was Softimage and Power Animator at the time on SGIs. And, just kind of reading manuals and working my way eventually into my very first job, and then kind of job after job after job, and just working my way up into everything, and eventually moved out to California for Matrix Revolutions, Matrix 3, from the East Coast. And yeah, I've just worked kind of, I've really diversified, a couple times at EA, working in games, working in commercials and advertising, working on ride films and roller coasters and feature films and animation and kind of you name it. I've kind of done it in entertainment, and yeah, just probably about 25 years now.
That's awesome. And your model of your whole career really is really just dabbling in a bunch of things, but yet you've still managed to rise in the ranks quickly as well.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the model nowadays, but it wasn't really. It was kind of like stay in one place for a long time. What are your thoughts on that for anybody listening?
Yeah, it was probably quite frowned upon. I remember going into electronic arts. They really didn't like that I'd been in visual effects, and then coming back into visual effects, they didn't like I had been in games. It was kind of like, why are you fraternizing with the enemy? And I never viewed it that way. I just, I was always really interested in I mean, if you really think about it, it's 3D graphics, right? It's everything. And now that's expanded into, apparel and car manufacturing. And I mean, there's visual effects and 3D graphics in almost every business there is now, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly was not like that back then. And, I would say that honestly, you kind of gave me that first opportunity into saying, you're a good supervisor, you're a good manager. Let me, push you, propel you forward, despite this, kind of like dominoed background you've had, where other maybe, studio managers didn't agree with you at the time. And it certainly worked. And, I appreciated the kind of catapult into that. And as soon as I got that first opportunity to say, that this is my show and I'm going to handle it, everything was been going great since then. So
That's
thank
awesome.
you.
Well, you get lots of accolades from all the artists and everyone you work with. So it wasn't me. They all help prop you up for sure because you're a great supervisor.
Thank you, Ryan.
So taking it a step further, because there's a lot of you go on LinkedIn nowadays, very recently, and there's a lot of people getting laid off, and a
Yeah.
lot of people getting panicked. Like you see some people like, I'm desperate. It's been X amount of months. I can't go another month without a job. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you see that little green thing on LinkedIn, that half circle, will work for food kind of thing. I don't remember, but there's a lot of those right now, that more than I've seen in a long time. What are your thoughts as far as because we've been through many either layoffs or bankruptcies, like the Life of Pi one back there. What are your thoughts on or sort of advice that you would give to any person that this is the first time they've gone through this cycle?
Yeah, it's hard, right? It's always kind of oftentimes it hits you and you don't expect it. And it's a blow to, your livelihood, your ego, and it's almost like a breakup or a death in a way
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on how attached you are to your position. Like I've spoken to friends who've been at ILM for 25 years that have just lost their role,
Oh
and
wow.
to them that's like a death in the family. It's
Absolutely.
having a hard time moving forward. My brother has always given me the greatest advice and stuff, and I think I've mentioned to this before, is that it's like, don't panic, right? Like,
Yeah.
take this like you would approach a job that you got for the first time, like a visual effects job or a new movie. It's like, take it methodically. I always, and I think he's 100% correct, is like, first thing you want to do is just get your material together, update your website, update your LinkedIn, update your resume, get your portfolio together, and don't, rush doing it. Don't, this is your introduction to the world. If you've been maybe working for a long time, take your time and get that correct. Second is figure out what you want to do. Oh, I really want to go, work in clothing apparel. I really want to work in games, or I really want to work, actually, no, I really want to work in visual effects. Figure out what that is, because if you just start spreading out there, the likelihood is you're going to get some responses, right?
Totally.
If you start wasting people's time, especially right now where it's kind of a bit of a bloodbath, recruiters don't want their time wasted. They probably have a million people hitting them up. So don't apply for jobs you don't really want, right?
Right.
And I think you and I've talked about before is that third moment of, it's like you're going to get a job. This is going to self-correct. The writer strike's going to get solved.
Yeah.
There's going to be lots of work out there. If you're professional and you've got your stuff together, you're going to get a job either through connections or just naturally through applying. But the one thing is I always remember, and I've made this mistake in past, is that when you throw that green "we'll work for food" flag up, right? You start reaching out to all your past supervisors and friends and colleagues. Help! I need a job. They're going to come to your aid. They're going to get you a job, and you better be willing and ready to take those jobs or take a job, because if you basically push that away and, oh no, I don't really want all those jobs.
Right. They're not going to waste their time with you next time. It's like,
Yeah,
kind of burn that.
It's the boy who cried wolf kind of scenario. So
Right.
I always take this stuff in stages. I'm always tempted to put that flag up real quick because the panic sets in, and oh my God, how am I going to pay my mortgage? But then if you just relax and kind of take it in stages a bit more methodically, it always works out better. And I've always taken my brother's advice. If you throw that flag too early, you might need that flag one day. We might eventually come to an economic scenario where this gets worse one day for us all, right? We all might really need to throw up that flag of like, I will take anything. I'm about to lose my home.
Right.
Please help me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've been through this a few times. Like, I mean, literally 3 days after I graduated college in 2000, the writers, directors, and actors all went on strike. And all at the same time. So Hollywood was like shut down. And it's like, oh, great film degree, sweet. And and I did get desperate enough where I was like applying for Starbucks and Southwest Airlines and all these other places. And as soon as I got a job offer from Southwest Airlines, I got like 4 other offers from film companies. But I took like the first one that came to me. And ultimately, I'm glad I did. But then the other offers, some of them I'm like, damn, that one's better than that. So I totally hear what you're saying about like, don't just, throw that panic button. I was panicked for sure at that point, sleeping on a floor, paying I had 3 roommates, each of them $50 to sleep on the floor, and even I couldn't survive that. So, I was definitely panicked, but that's what got me in visual effects. I had my first job through that. And then the big one was the R&H one for me, the bankruptcy. That's when I just went, oh my God. It was the life is over, like you mentioned, 25 years at ILM, some of these folks. And, at that point I was, I don't know, almost 11, 12 years or so with R&H. Yeah. And it was like a death in the family. I mean, you grow up with all these people, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine not working with these people anymore. And it is sad for sure. And that was kind of when I went through my plan B. Like, what is my plan B? And that's when I started learning about money, and ultimately led me to this. What are your thoughts on as far as going the money route? What are your thoughts as far as like investing? Because for that plan B, like at least having enough of money you can, not that's stowed away in some 401k that you can't touch for 65 until you're 65, but like having something so that when these things happen, you're not panicked immediately. Because I know some people right now who are like, I can't go a month without a paycheck. So,
That
what are your
seems to
thoughts there?
be that seems to be the majority of our industry, as I've
Yeah,
in myself included to a certain extent,
yeah,
because when you work these jobs, say if you've been somewhere for 10, 20 years, you get this I don't know if it's ego or confidence that it's never going to run out, right? And I
right,
can just live up to that paycheck because that's going to keep coming.
yeah,
And then it stops, you're not prepared, right?
yeah,
And then the other part of our industry is like we end up tending to manage our finances just as we manage these shows, right? Like you get a movie comes in, we hire everyone dedicates their life, you work your life away, you peak, then we fall off the other end, the show's over, everyone scrambles, everyone gets fired, right? Or laid off or whatever it is. And we're going to this recovery mode of like, oh my God, I just worked so much. Oh, okay, let me take better care of myself for a minute. Let me get back to my life before I start the next thing. And that's how we handle our finances, right? We got to accumulate this money because we're working, we have no time to spend it. We fall off the cliff, we're somewhat miserable. You spend all your money,
right,
you get the job, you kind of, and this is kind of this, what my brother and I have always referred to the visual effects and animation business as binge and purge. In gaming, it's a little more stable because
yeah,
they have longer binge and purges, but it is similar. And then, a lot of our industry, we come into this similar I did, through technical school, or you've taken an online classes, or you're self-taught. A lot of people don't go through university or come through some sort of major studies, and they don't have any kind of background in economics or finance or really understanding of anything. They've gone from even high school or a low paying job like myself, you're a mechanic or working at like a movie theater or as a cook, you get your first job and it's considerable amount more money. And you have no education on what to do,
right.
right? You've driving a beater car, living in a crap
You
hole.
bump that car up,
You
BMW.
bump it up,
Yeah,
bump it up, and it's like you're fair. It's almost like you see this in sports players all the time. You're so uneducated to
yeah,
what to be doing and how to prepare for the future. And most of us don't understand the volatility of our chosen professions and our chosen entertainment industry. And it's yeah, and it doesn't seem like many of us have learned our lesson, including myself, which is
mm-hmm.
why I'm talking to you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I was in the same boat. I'd put money in a 401k and never, it was just kind of staying stable. It was kind of going up, but only because I was putting money into it. And the fees that they were taking, I'm like, what is the point of this? Because it's not growing. And
Yeah.
because I was just like, I don't care about money. I don't care about finances. I want to leave that to somebody else. And the second I realized that how big the fees were for that, I'm going to retire in 2035 or 45, whatever it was. Those automated ones the fees are enormous. And
Yeah.
the second I took that off and started like putting it in Disney, once I rolled it into a IRA, Disney stocks and blah, 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 then it started moving up. And I think that's a big thing is a lot of people just don't care, just let somebody else handle it. A lot of times people don't realize those financial advisors that you get at like Fidelity or whatever, they have like
Yeah.
6 months training. It's like,
It's crazy.
it's insane.
Yeah. But they're
And
handling your money.
they're
right?
handling your money.
Yeah.
And they don't care because they win either way. You're putting all the risk in, they win either way. So that's kind of where I went through my journey with R&H when that went down. And I went down this rabbit hole of, how money works, the history of money, all this kind of stuff. But I would say that's why I want to start teaching people about financial education on money you can access now, so that when you hit times like you will hit times like this, everybody has some mini apocalypse or several mini apocalypses in their lives that they need to deal with.
Yeah.
And it concerns me for my fellow artists and production people and whatnot in the industry, because none of us most of us don't care about how the money is dealt with, because we're artists, you know. And
we've all like dedicated our life to this industry. You know, when we're working in the industry, it's all encompassing for most of us.
Right.
You know, most of us work at a minimum 8 hours a day, if not more.
Yeah.
And then when we're not working, we tend to be spending all of our time either recovering from the job, we're trying to get the next job, or learning all the new technology and new software, and new techniques to keep us
keep up. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
a
really
lot of
good
us
point.
don't dedicate the time that's necessary into, you know, financial health or physical health, mental health, these sort of things.
Right. And we're very nomadical, you know, going where the job is anywhere in the world, wherever the tax credit is or whatever it may be. You and I both went to Vancouver. I was there for 10 years. You were there 7?
About
5?
5-ish, yeah, about
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this, but
Yeah.
you know, what were your big aha moments? I gotta get back to the US, and why? Yeah.
So I guess
Not to bag on Canada, because we both made the decision. I thought I was going to be there forever, to be honest. But
we had a wonderful time moving to Vancouver. At the time, I had no kids. It was certainly an amazing experience for us. Canada as a whole is an amazing country. The Canadian people are incredible people.
Yeah.
And Vancouver is an amazing city. If anyone gets an opportunity to ever travel there and visit it, you absolutely should go there. It's incredible, particularly in the summer and springtime, really. But I'd say I was not educated at all about what I was getting myself into when I moved up there. I didn't even really consider the exchange rate. Honestly, when I moved up there, and you know, you hired me to be one of the first employees at Rhythm and Hughes, when my basically my salary converted over, I didn't realize that it wasn't dollar for dollar. I had no consideration. I basically was making less money. I didn't really realize that. You get up there and you realize, wow, everything is so expensive, yet I'm making this good salary and I'm supervising these movies, yet I'm having trouble paying my bills. Mm-hmm. And I had just assumed I would get better and better and better, and it never did. And I think that was part of my return back, was really a couple. It was that I didn't know what I was doing. I was like kind of investing in a retirement and like a life there, which I knew I would never live there forever. I wasn't even a citizen. I was making, you know, 6-figure income, but converting that back to US dollars, if I had to pay school loan payments back here, or putting back in the US, it was getting reduced down, sometimes as much as 40%, 30%, losing all that money, right? Yeah. And then on top of that, we had some kind of medical issues with my wife's pregnancies and stuff. And, you know, the medical system up there was amazing for what it was when we needed it. But when we had these emergency situations and continued emergency care, it didn't feel necessarily like it was the same quality of care that we would get in the US, because we pay for it in the US, which is the difference, I think, to me, maybe in my uneducated view. And all of that kind of brought us back to the US, is that paying the taxes back here in the US while I was still up in Canada, the conversion of the money, the school loan payments, and then the medical.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar experience. My wife had a stroke up there, and that's where I loved the healthcare up until that point. And once you really need it, it was like, okay, it's enough to keep you alive, but not really quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a major factor for us, and the tax thing too. And it's kind of a bag on both countries, because as a U.S. citizen, you're taxed no matter where you are in the world, and you have to file taxes no matter where you go, except if you move to Puerto Rico. But anywhere else in the world, you get taxed, and so you can get out of it because there's a treaty with them, but then you have to pay all this money for somebody to professionally do it for you to get out of that. And then if you go past 5 years, now Canada, if you have assets that are down anywhere else, like in the U.S., now Canada needs you to pay an exit tax if you ever decide to leave after that. And that was a whole ordeal. And did you get out of there before then?
I got out of there. No, I had to deal with that too.
You did? Yeah. Because I learned about it afterwards, and I'm like, Well, that's some fine print.
And some of it it would have been great, I think, if I would have said, listen, I'm going to stay in Canada the rest of my life. And maybe
Yeah.
everything would have been great. But certainly since I was kind of straddling the border, so to say, in my own like lack of education, it just kind of made I mean, I think I've told you this in past, like when we came back to LA from Vancouver, we were so in the hole financially. We were worse off when we came back before I left. Yet my profession had grown considerably, and I was now in a higher tax bracket and all these things. We were more in the hole just because of the decisions I had made, not understanding what I was really doing. And then it took us about a good 5 years in the US to climb out of that hole that I put myself in by going to Canada. Now, I don't regret it because it was an amazing experience, but
I'm the same, yeah.
Avoided a lot of it if I had just been a little bit more proactive and educated in the whole scenario.
Totally. And actually, that's a huge point, really good point, that I actually start off my masterclass with that exact point where I have people go through the screenwriting process of what a character wants, because every character wants something, and that's how you kind of map out a character, their character arc throughout the story. And you're your own character. You're the main character in your own movie, in real life. And so I had actually gone to this conference in 2019 in Austin, Texas, called Ask Live, and it was a marketing thing. And there was this guy named Ryan Dice that got on stage, and he talked about a character diamond and how to basically conform your business to this character diamond, or you as a leader, and you would map out what characters want and how you are as a character. I'm like, wait a second, I should be doing this. And that's kind of what made, sort of sparked the idea of Money Act, where pairing movies and money. And so I put more than just the character diamond in, where you really map out what you want. And it literally helped me figure out, a lot of us don't even know what we want because we don't take the time to think about it. Like you said, you're just on to the next job and on to this and on to that. And it wasn't until I really mapped out, and it's not like I want a Porsche or something. That's not, and maybe that's a little part of it if you really want that. But where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years? And where do you see yourself going? Where do you want to end up? Because you can't end up there if you don't even know you want to go there. And and it's crazy to think that you don't know what you want, but a lot of us don't. And like you said, perfectly, I hadn't even thought about it, and it wasn't until you really sat down to think about it. You're in Oregon right now. That's where you want to be. And if you hadn't done that, you would have wasted more years sort of having to then recoup whatever you needed, financially, if you were doing RSPs there or whatever. So that was a huge point for me as well. I was like, I don't, of course, when I did map that out, it was during the pandemic and everything was locked down. We couldn't even see our parents right on the other side of the border and all that stuff. And so there was a whole bunch of leading into my wife's stroke. So once I mapped that out, I was like, I don't even want to be here anymore. I want to be with palm trees again, and I'm sick of the rain. And I started mapping everything out, especially financially, like you said, with the taxes and the money thing. And then it was like, now my mind was open to opportunities back down here and that kind of thing. So that is a huge point that I think a lot of people don't really take the time to sit down and think about what they want.
Yeah, I know. For myself, I certainly never do it. And it's also an important thing to do even professionally. Like, do I even like visual effects?
Yeah, right.
Or is this just what I do, right? Or I think that I like it, or I think that, I told you before, I took this trajectory where I became an on-set visual effects supervisor and all these things because I thought that that's like, you're supposed to do that.
Right.
Until the moment I got there and I was on set every day going, I don't want to be here. Mm-hmm. I miss working with teams of artists. I miss the camaraderie and the work together. I miss the CG technology, and it was really almost making these wrong decisions helped me figure out what the right decision for
Sure.
me was.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately how I have to do things. Hopefully other people
Yeah.
don't need to do that. But I know for myself now going forward, which is part of the reason I've been talking with you so much about all this stuff, is that I now, for the very first time, almost 50 years old, I look at my paychecks and I go, it's like almost half of the paycheck is like gone,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then, and it's like, where does it go? Who
Right.
is it going to? If I didn't pay taxes, I'd be pretty well off. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, how do I keep some of that? Because that's something I remember you telling me a long time ago. It's not how much you make; it's how much you keep.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Taxes are actually your biggest expense in life. In fact, I had a boss that we were talking, and I was kind of pissed off because I was dealing with taxes. And I'm like, look how much money they're stealing. And she kind of laughed at me like, oh, stealing, ha ha. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you think about it, they're stealing from you, because if you say, I don't want to pay for their wars or their bridges to nowhere, whatever else they waste, they just piss your money away because they don't care. It's not their money. And if you think about it, yeah, I don't want to fund them. I don't want to pay my taxes. Well, if you don't pay your taxes, then you go to jail. And if you refuse to go to jail because you wouldn't pay your taxes, then they hold a gun to your head, to put cuffs on you, to take you to jail. So it's literally theft at gunpoint. And you know, sorry government, that's what it is. I can't stand government. But that's why I don't care. You know, a lot of people, oh, you're not paying your fair share to rich people or whatever. It's really an attack on middle class, because let's face it, the middle class get poached by the rich and the poor.
Right.
And you've got to be able to do what you can to minimize that and keep, it's as much as you can keep. That's what it is. It's
right.
And there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it with your W-2 income, and obviously there's a lot more ways to do it otherwise. Way easier ways, like if you have your own business, your own side business, and there's lots of ways. Like, I mean, I employ Cameron, my son, to edit some of my videos, and he composites and he shoots these. If you employ your kids, they can make $12,900 a year currently in the US, tax-free for them and tax-free for you as a business. So you know, there's little things. And then you tell them, hey, go buy your own clothes. You're making money. So there's a lot of things you can do, and yeah, the tax one is the biggest. There's another thing I put on the masterclass, but I also throw it in one of my freebie things, that a penny a day taxed. So if you make a penny a day, and it doubles every day. So you make a penny, the next day it's 2 pennies, next day it's 4 pennies, and so on. If you didn't get taxed, it's like, I can't remember, it's like 10 million, 20 million. So I know it's more than 10 million. It's probably like 30 million or something. If it's taxed, it's like 75 grand.
Oh my God.
And that's taxed at like 35%. Like, everyone's taxed at least that, you know, when you add all your taxes in. So yeah, that's a big one. It's a really good point. The how much you get to keep is what matters, not how much you make.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, one of my mentors, visual effects, telling me, says, you know, similar thing. He said, the more money I make, it seems like the less money.
Yeah, exactly. And it is true. The higher the tax bracket, the percentage they take. And so you look at like how much more you make, but you don't get to keep that much more. It's pretty crazy.
That's the next thing for me to like understand in my life. It's taken me this long, but hopefully someone else was able to look into it earlier in their life and understand, where's all this money going? How can I get some of it, right?
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Well, I know we're bumping up on the 30-minute mark, and I'm going to try to keep these around there, but you know, everybody, you know, respond in the comments. Let me know if you want these longer, or if this is a perfect length, maybe shorter. This is too long. I think it's pretty engaging conversation, but you tell me. And why don't we wrap it up? Your favorite film?
All right, my favorite film, I'd say right now, it's kind of twofold at the moment. So living in Oregon, near the coast here, my kids have gotten into watching The Goonies. which
Yes.
is an Oregon film and takes place like just out, in Astoria, which is just north of Portland.
I can't get my
And,
kids to watch Goonies. Maybe I need to come visit you and say, see, this.
it was my favorite film growing up with all my brother and my buddies. And in Tampa, we used to like
Love
even
that movie.
play the Goonies and pretend to be the Goonies.
Yeah.
And my kids have been watching it. They love it. It really holds up. And it's like, it's kind of an amazing movie still. If you could look past some of the racial stereotype stuff that's insensitive.
Right.
Then the second one I'd say at the moment is probably Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. It's like,
Yeah.
just kind of, for me, it's a masterpiece. It's like long and drawn out, and moody and dramatic and beautiful, and just the acting and the brutality of that movie is just,
It's a
I
great
don't know.
movie. Yeah.
It's like he doesn't even need dialogue in his scenes to tell the story. It's so incredible, that movie. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, I'm a big Daniel Day-Lewis fan. I love that movie. Love Gangs in New York. It's probably my favorite bad guy in any movie, and that's why I've done a few videos with both of those movies on YouTube, because I love both those movies. But yeah, thank you so much, Comley. This was great. And why don't we? Let's see, because I'm new to this, I got to remember to say, don't forget to check out my website and my YouTube channel. I'm sure it's going to be in some comment below. And then also there's going to be a community that I'm going to try to bring together for all of us to be able to share investing ideas and maybe even pitch projects together to each other. And I'm working with a producer that's done a small version of this with Hallmark movies that I've invested in, and I'm going to talk to him to see if I can bring his lawyer on board to figure out how they did the sort of shares in the movie. And I want to do this with games and movies, the whole cross media thing. So be on the lookout for that as well, because I think we could build something really incredible together and sort of maybe even help us sort of even out those big, highs and lows in the production process, because we control it instead of the WGA or whoever else is involved in making movies these days.
That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much, Comley. This was great, and I hope all of you really enjoyed this. And then don't forget, Money Act is all about putting you in the director's chair of your finances.